أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. We start in the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. And we bear witness there is no deity worthy worship except Allah. Praise and glory be to Him. And that Muhammad is the seal of messengers. He was sent as a mercy to all mankind. May peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, his family, his companions, and those who followed his path and the day of Jannah. I greet you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Peace, brothers. Peace and blessing be upon you, our brothers, our sisters, our viewers, and brother Asad Zaman, who is our guest for tonight, inshallah, for this A2Z show after a break of a few weeks in the month of Ramadan, which has passed very, very fast. And we had Eid. I hope you have a happy and blessed Eid al-Fitr, which took place with the majority of Muslim countries on Thursday, alhamdulillah. And of course, may Allah wish you all a blessed and happy Eid, and may Allah accept our fasting, our prayers, our supplication, our good deeds. And of course, we pray, of course, for those people who have passed away before even Eid during the COVID-19, to have mercy upon their souls and give them the highest for those in paradise. And those who are ill, and we have brother Anis from Algeria. He's in the hospital and he wants to join his family, and he could not go because of the lockdown of Algeria. And we are appealing to the Algerian government to give him an exceptional permission to join his family, because he's so ill. He wants to actually join his family because he was he's ill as well. But we hope inshallah he can join his family. Huh?
Yes, so inshallah, let us continue with our program.
Right. Yeah, therefore we start with our community local news. I think Friday pulpit. Of course, we had the Thursday Eid khutbah. Under COVID-19, many mosques have done 1, 2, up to 5 Eids. I think you were in the Muslim Youth Foundation.
I was indeed, yes. Alhamdulillah, good number of people came. But of course, again, with the restrictions.
At what time was it? At what time did you start?
One is at 8 o'clock, that was mine, and then there's another one at 10 o'clock. So there were two at the foundation.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a bit, obviously not the same as normal. I mean, last year, of course, it was completely cancelled. And I remember I actually held the Eid prayer with 2 of my neighbors. And of course, we couldn't come into each other's garden last year. So I was in my garden and the other families were in their own gardens, like 3 houses together. So that was quite an interesting one. But this time, of course, at least, alhamdulillah, we managed to do it in the mosque. But of course, I had to say to them, look, the natural desire is that we hug each other, after the salah, but please, let's make sure that, we maintain our social distancing, and we hug each other from a distance, in a sense. And so really, it was a bit of a lackluster, event. Yes, I gave did the prayer, did the khutbah, and reminded everyone of the issues, what the purpose of the of Ramadan was, and we mustn't forget what that purpose was. It was obviously to raise our taqwa, and everyone has a raised taqwa, inshallah, some more than others. Those who put more into it will get more out of it, and therefore all of us have actually, inshallah, those who took Ramadan at least slightly seriously, did improve upon their taqwa. And now the important thing is, when the end of Ramadan comes, then the shaitan starts whispering in our ears. And the kind of whispering we get is that, look, you've been an amazing guy or woman. You look how much you've fasted. Look how much money you've given in charity. Look at all the self-control you've had. Look at all those prayers and going to the mosque even in these difficult circumstances. So, you've been really good. Now you can relax. Now, the rest of the year, you don't need to worry about it. All those, whatever self-control you had over any haram actions, whether it's alcohol or zina or pornography or whatever you were looking at doing, before Ramadan. Look how much control you had. Now Ramadan is over. Okay, you've given to God what is God's. That's Ramadan. Now the rest of the 11 months is for your nafs. That is the whispering that the shaitan starts putting into our ears. And I reminded them of that we mustn't fall victim to the shaitan's whispering. And whatever level of taqwa we have achieved, we must do everything we can to at least maintain it. But of course, we should try to increase it. Ramadan is about boosting your iman. It's about boosting your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was about developing self-control of those organs of your body through which we commit sins, whether it's eyes, ears, mouth, hands, other parts. And therefore, we must make sure that we don't allow a reduction of that taqwa. And how are we going to make sure of that? Well, there is no better way than to implement the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For him and for us, the situation certainly was for him, and we should be for us, that fasting, yes, it is fard on every single day of Ramadan. But fasting should not only be relegated to Ramadan. Fasting should be a way of life for us, as it was for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and for his Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. They would fast. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recommended we fast on every Monday and Thursday. And then, of course, non-Muslim doctors are telling us how enormously beneficial it is for our health. But of course, spiritually, it will help us to maintain our iman. Then, of course, is the 3 middle days of every month, the 13th, 14th, and 15th, the white days. And then you've got your first 9 days of Dhul Hijjah. Very, very beneficial to fast on those days. And in particular on the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah, which of course is Yom Arafah, or the day of Hajj, the most important day. And then there's Ashura as well. So actually, fasting, when you look at it, is something that's just part of our lives. And now doctors are, and experts are telling us why it is just so incredibly important to maintain our health in every sense. How we eat all this garbage, and then when we fast, the body cleanses out that rubbish, it flushes out it, detoxification. And at the same time, it helps improve our memories, it helps improve, delays the onset of dementia, etc. So many health benefits, enormous health benefits. But the important thing is, by fasting regularly, we will maintain that spirit of Ramadan throughout the year. So now that the 3 days of Eid are coming to an end, we need to make sure that the 6 days of Shawwal, we don't forget them. Fasting for those 6 days, anytime in those 6 days, during the whole of this month, is equivalent to having fasted for a whole year. So that's a bargain from Allah. Fast for 6 days, and you get the whole year's sins forgiven. Amazing, absolutely amazing. So let's use those. And I also reminded everyone of the pressures globally and locally that the Ummah is suffering. And we shouldn't be despondent and frustrated and depressed about this, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already warned us. This dunya, you are going to be tested. And the test is there to show Allah who is truthful and who's a liar, who deserves Jannah and who does not. That's the whole point of the test. So being tested is part and parcel of being human. And so long as we understand it in that context, inshallah, we will pass every single test with sabr and with steadfastness. So let's always understand this. And I also reminded them that what Ibn Kathir says, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests those whom he loves. And how? Well, the toughest tests are for the prophets of Allah, those who are closest to Allah. And then the next level, lower level of test is for those who are, again, the next level in terms of closest to Allah from the prophets, and then the next, and then the next. And of course, the toughest tests are for the prophets because the reward is the greatest. The harder the exam, the greater the reward. And therefore, the tougher the test, we should say Alhamdulillah and be very, very steadfast with sabr and accept it from Allah. Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. I thank Allah in every condition. So that way you remove all your frustration and you do all you can to remove your affliction. And then you say, Tawakkal ala Allah. I leave the rest to Allah. And so even in these very, very difficult times, and we can see, we'll be talking about Gaza and Al-Aqsa a little bit later on. But these are tough times, and we see those terrible images of whole families being wiped out with the most deadliest of missiles, which are made for the battlefield, but which are being used in residential areas. Clearly a war crime, and we see these war crimes now happening on a daily basis. But if someone is above the law, they can get away with it. Only in this world, because in the next, there is no getting away from the punishment of Allah, from the wrath of Allah. And so we do what we can to help our brothers and sisters around the world who are going through these very, very, very tough tests. And leave the rest to Allah. We do what we can, which is in our power. We just pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He guides our leaders towards away from the dunya, towards thinking about the akhirah and thinking about their brothers and sisters, who are suffering in Kashmir, of course, and in Gaza, in Palestine, also in Syria, in Iraq, Yemen. I mean, there's suffering all over. Situation in Burma with the Rohingya Muslims, the situation, of course, in China with the Uyghurs, and of course, not just Uyghurs, other Muslims are now coming under the attack of the atheist communists who run China. So yeah, it's a depressing scene, but we mustn't lose hope. This is a short life. The moment you die, and we can die anytime at all. We see death and suffering every day on our screens. And so it's not something that happens to others. It happens to everyone. And the moment we die, khalas, the game is over. And whatever you're going to take with you will be you'll be judged according to that. So let's make sure that we send forward plenty of hasanat that will help us in the akhirah. Inshallah.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. And just a few remarks about the Wilmslow Road and the youngsters coming from, most of them from outside Manchester, and creating a lot of chaos and disorder.
Well, before COVID, I would have a go at them. I'd say, look, they come over here. They could go to Blackpool. They could go so many other places, but they come to Wilmslow Road because it's become like a bit of a hub. It's a nice long road, plenty of Muslim restaurants and the Curry Mile as it's called, and they just hire these expensive cars and show off to each other and to the girls around them, and many of them even get drunk. They drink alcohol, and it's a very sad scene. But because of COVID, we see a lot of young people now just out of sheer frustration. They've got energy and they've not been allowed to expend that energy. And so it becomes an outlet for them. So, I mean, they're not the only ones. There are so many people, they act very irresponsibly, non-Muslims having parties underground and secretly here and there with hundreds of them, no social distancing, no mask, nothing. And so it's not just these Muslim youth who are irresponsible. I'm afraid youth generally tend to be irresponsible, but we should be setting a good standard. But, these young boys who are grown up here, many of them, they've got Muslim names, yes. But beyond that, with many and many of them, it's, it doesn't go beyond that. Their behavior, unfortunately, alcohol is okay, drugs, shisha, girls. Their lifestyle is not very different to the lifestyle of non-Muslims, unfortunately. And it's partly our fault. We've got to sort out our mosques. We've got to make sure that our mosques are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I have lost you there. Right. I think we can, because of Eid, and of course, today there was the 73rd Remembrance Day of the Palestinian Nakba catastrophe in 15th of May 1948. And there was a protest and a march from Platfields Park, Whitworth Park, Rochelle, Manchester Piccadilly Garden, and organized by Palestine Solidarity Campaign and many other civil society organizations who participated from different organizations, Palestine Forum as well, Muslim Association Britain, and other organizations, Palestine Action Group as well. And of course, thousands of people came, and I estimate about maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people came. And of course, they did a protest, and I think the social media was there. And one thing which was striking me, the mainstream media was absent. And this is one of the placards which I like to show it. I think you can tell me if you can you read it?
I certainly can, yes. Mainstream media supports Israeli war crimes.
Yes. And therefore, because what I see is at the end, two freelancers, I believe that they are apprentice, learning to do journalism and writing and taking pictures and writing articles in newspapers. One was a freelancer, he told me, and the other one was from Mancunian Matters, and he took a statement, and he promised me something, and he sent me a statement which that's from the Muslim Association Britain, statement on Israel violence in Jerusalem, and quite amazing. This is in his 20s, early 20s, and he wrote a beautiful article based on statement, and he wrote me this, and it's a beautiful thing he put there, and he promised to send it to me, and he has sent it to me. And this is, he said, the Muslim Association Britain is appalled at the brutality and fresh wave of violence enacted by the Israeli state against Palestinian residents of Jerusalem. So far, after 6 days of aggression, 139 civilians have been murdered, including 37 children, 22 women in the 15 years long besieged Gaza, and 11 people in the occupied territories, with 400 injured and more than 10,000 displaced from their homes to refugee camps and United Nations schools, and compared with only 9 civilians and soldiers, one soldier or 2 soldiers from the other, and 150 injured from the other side of Zionist occupation army. During the night aerial attack, they have targeted residential blocks flats, media tower. The latest was the Al Jazeera and the ABC News Corporation, and banks, and even refugee camp as well. Over the past week, Israeli forces have engaged in human rights abuse and crimes against humanity against the Palestinian civilians, threatened displacement of their homes, prevented them from accessing their places of worship, attacking peaceful protesters, and killing innocent people in and around Palestine, in the under siege Gaza, and in the occupied territory. This abuse culminates in the unprovoked attack and desecration and disrespect of the sanctity of Al-Aqsa Mosque and its surrounding, one of the most sacred places of worship for over 2 billion Muslims around the world, by the Israeli forces, who used stone grenade, tear gases, rubber bullet-coated bullets to attack peaceful worshippers while they were praying in the last most holiest days of the month of Ramadan, and at least 200 Palestinians were injured by Israeli forces. This violence comes in the wake of damning report by Human Rights Watch that identify Israel's action as amounting to an apartheid system. Through this action, Israel continues to show its disdain for human rights and international laws. Their attack on unarmed peaceful worshippers in Aqsa Mosque and deliberate escalation of the violence we saw towards.
Look, this is going to go on. Look, I got the point. I got the point.
Let me just finish. Towards Palestinians who are being forcefully displaced from their homes in Sheikh Jarrah, neighborhood of Jerusalem, like the displacement of 750,000 people from 600 villages in 1948 through terrorist attacks on civilians to facilitate the building of more illegal settlement. And of course, the appeal is to the government, our government, because it has historical responsibility for the Nakba catastrophe of the Palestinian through the Balfour Declaration, must act to prevent further violence towards innocent Palestinians and to put a halt to the forced displacement in Jerusalem, especially given the call by anti-Palestinian illegal settlers to storm Aqsa, which hopefully didn't happen. And
hang on. Look, this is all in the mainstream media. We don't need to repeat all of this.
Therefore,
can we continue with our program, please?
Therefore,
can we continue with our Abdul Aziz? Can we continue with our program? Continue with our program?
Anyway, what I like of this is a youngster writing article like this, and this is very good as well, and I think well done for him as well. Now, let's go back to our things. 150,000 protesters. Can I ask you one question? Why the mainstream media is absent?
The mainstream media, who's behind it? You have the Murdoch media, okay? He is in control of so much of our media. Murdoch is a pro-Israeli. He's a Christian Zionist. And therefore, he does not want anything but the pro-Israeli narrative to be heard by anyone. And the Express and these other tabloid newspapers, you just have to look at who the owners are. Media has owners, and the owners have agendas. And therefore, you just have to look at what their agenda is. And if it's a pro-Israel agenda, well, of course, you know, anything that it goes against Israeli interests, they will not be interested in covering it. And therefore, why should they cover something that goes against their agenda, their interests? And, you know, and you look at the corporations, these big corporations, especially the American news media, is, well, completely controlled by Zionist elements. So, you know, this is the reality. This is not just some kind of conspiracy theory or whatever. You just have to look at who the owners are and what their politics is, and it's obvious. British media is heavily influenced by Zionists. It's not completely owned by them. and therefore, again, their narrative is going to be given greater priority. So that's, in a nutshell, the reason. Okay, in a nutshell, that's the reason. That's why we need
but do you think that
that's why we need our own media to push our narrative, and social media is a great way of doing it.
But now, do you think that, do you think that they can censorship, like, because now they are talking to Facebook and Instagram and Twitters to stop this kind of propagating the information and the support for the Palestinians as well? Do you think they can actually control the social media?
More and more young people in particular are taking their news from social media rather than mainstream media. This is one of the biggest problems that the mainstream media has got, is that people are switching away. And therefore, those who control the media, they are worried that the narrative is being taken away from them. And therefore, we need to be more active on social media, because that is the way forward. That is the future.
Right. And I myself and yourself, you pay for the BBC because of the TV license. And the BBC, a corporation, when it was set up, first day they said, we are here to educate the British people, and they have a BBC World Service and everything. Why the BBC, I pay for the fees, but why they are not covering the events as they should be? And they have all the correspondent now of the BBC are working as a consultant with Al Jazeera after retirement, and we can listen now to Al Jazeera, and we get the picture and the sound and the report from different people. You have been invited in the 80s, 90s, up to now, to the BBC, some of the programs, Big Question. Have you been invited to speak about this issue, about the Palestine issue, the Zionist and the conflict in Palestine in recently now? And do you think that they will invite you, or no, they will not invite you?
Well, I've not been invited to speak on this issue. Perhaps they feel that I'm not appropriate. It's not a field of expertise for me. I mean, I can only think along those lines. And perhaps they've got other people who can speak more eloquently on this issue. I mean, if I was an expert on it, then I could certainly make them aware that I'm available, and perhaps they would invite me. But no, they haven't. That might be one of the reasons why. Who knows? I've not actually been watching mainstream news anyway. I only watch selected stuff. I don't watch.
Are you relying more or less on social media more now?
Much more, far more, and also particular news reports. Whether it's Sky News, whether it's BBC, whether it's Al Jazeera or anyone else, on specific segments. I try not to watch, the whole thing. I don't have time for it. So I literally, for example, on YouTube, I will watch only certain sections. I can go back, I can go forward. You have much more power over what you watch, rather than you sit there like a zombie and you just sit there for hours and hours just watching whatever is thrown at you. I tend not to do that.
Right. And the social media is playing a role, and you think that those who control of Facebooks and Instagram, they will not actually, because like we have now the alternative from Turkey on to WhatsApp. Do you think now we need most Muslims to get an alternative for to get our news through?
Yes, we need to develop something more professional. It's not very difficult to actually produce something fairly professional for a very cheap price on social media. Who hasn't got WhatsApp? Who hasn't got Telegram? Who hasn't got you know, we've got all of these, and we can very easily just pass them around, and it can you know, get to a huge audience in a very short time. You can have, you know, one person, I receive it, a news item, and I think this is interesting. It doesn't take very long, seconds, for me to send it out to 1,000 people. If one person can send it out to 1,000 people within a matter of seconds, well, what about each of them? They've got their own WhatsApp groups and Telegram groups and all the rest of it. And so within a very short time, you've got millions of people who've watched that. So yes, okay. Social media is very powerful. We need to use it.
Very powerful. And regarding apprenticeships in the media and more Muslims to choose as a career in the media, whether the TV and or written or the social media as well. Do you think, how can we encourage youngsters, our Muslim youngsters, to go to the media?
From a very early age, we need to stop saying doctor, accountant, lawyer. You know, these are the sort of things that we are pushing them towards, because we feel that you know, there's prestige and money and all that, you know, in these. We need to diversify. We need to encourage them towards going into the media. You look at the number of Indians now in the media, and you know, they were smart at maybe 20, 30 years ago. They realized, okay, we've got enough doctors, we've got enough accountants. These people don't have that much influence in society. But who does? People in the media. They have influence in society. And, you know, we see them in the BBC now, in prominent positions. Also, of course, politics. That has plenty of influence. And we see, you know, Indians who are a very small minority making headway in, you know, how many are there Indians in the cabinet are there? Quite a number. Certainly far more than the percentage of Indians in the country. So, you know, and those Indians, especially the Hindus there, they've taken a leaf out of the Jewish book. And the Jews realized media and politics are two, and of course business, these are three main areas to encourage our children to go into. And they've done it. And, you know, they are big in business, they are big in the media now, and they're big in politics, way beyond the percentage of their population.
And therefore, you want people to come out of this, accountants, medical doctors, because the media is part of da'wah, isn't it?
Very much so. And of course, you know, media is how you create your own narrative. Media is how you tell people, you know, your side of the story. I remember I had a meeting once with the head of religious programming in the BBC. This is a few years back. And, you know, I complained to him that there's a lot of, you know, Islamophobic stuff in the BBC and other places. And how can we, you know, bring about a change in this? He said, become script writers, become producers and directors, get into the media, get into the BBC and start becoming editors. And then, you know, go up. He said, that's how you're going to do it, by getting into the media. Don't leave, don't just complain from outside. Oh, there's this report is Islamophobic and this report is, you know, not fair. And he said, don't do that. Just get into the media and write your own narrative, become editors, etc. And this is really the way forward. And we still haven't got it. You know, nowhere near as many Muslims are going into the media as they should do. So,
and,
yeah.
and complain now that we had there was a petition and complain about the BBC coverage of Gaza and what is happening in Palestine, everything. Last time we had somebody spoke about the Harry and his wife, private matters of the royal family. We got 45,000 complaint for that. But how many, why we are speaking to each other, but we are not using the system and knowing how to complain when things are by writing? Because I know speaking verbally, you don't do anything. But if you do it in written, it becomes legal and they have to answer you back.
Look, let me explain something. Most people, and you know this as well as I do, I don't have time. You know, we don't have time to write out letters. We don't have time to pick up the phone, and we don't even know who to ring. We don't even have the phone numbers. And how many of us actually listen to the news on a regular basis? So what is required, and this is, again, you know, the Jews have done this, Hindus have done this, is you have dedicated organizations. People come together and say, okay, this is going to be something we're going to do. This is my baby now. So every time there is any article in the newspaper, in any newspaper, anytime there is any article in some news broadcast, we're going to challenge it if we don't like the contents. And then, you know, and to some extent this is happening, you know, templates are sent out and say, right, just put your name and address or phone number on there and just send it. And this is this, you know, who's your MP? This is MP, right? This is the email address. Send it to them, etc. So we need a dedicated team, an organization, which is well funded and well manned, so that we know that someone is doing the job for us. At the moment, it's kind of left to Tom, Dick, or Harry, and you can't, you know, get serious work done like that. It just doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, you are listening to A2Z show on Radio Hajj, and this is Brother Asad Zaman, and we have just covering almost the national and national news. I think I want you just to talk about maybe a little bit about the election, local election, and the Scottish election and the Welsh and the Northern Ireland election under COVID-19 condition, and the percentage of participation. And of course, we had the very big maybe breaking news of Tiger Patel Conservative win in Hartlepool against the Labour-held seat, which has been held from the 60s, and what is once United Muslim Vote. And he had done a very good campaign in Ramadan and under COVID-19 condition. Do you think the Muslim vote, if it's used, it can decide about the fate of many candidates, whether on parliament or local council or Lord Mayor or police commissioner, and so on and so forth?
Well, Labour got beaten up badly. And there are a number of reasons why Labour got beaten up badly and lost the popular vote, and why they've lost more councils and council seats, and why traditional Labour Party supporters are abandoning them. You see, one is, of course, Brexit. Many of the areas which used to be Labour also voted for Brexit as well. And because they voted for Brexit, And because Boris Johnson has delivered Brexit, that's why Labour, and of course, Labour did a terrible job of, I mean, you know, Corbyn has his good aspects, but also he was hopeless, absolutely hopeless when it came to Brexit. He just couldn't make his mind up. Do I want to stay in or do I want to stay out? You know, the electorate wants to hear something very, very clear. And he absolutely miserably failed in getting the message across. Whereas Boris Johnson was very clear. I want out. And, you know, and he lied, of course, about 350 million or, you know, a week going we should be going to the NHS, but it's going to Brussels and all the rest of it. There's a lot of lies there, no question about it. But the message was clear, and Labour lost. They just got disconnected from the public. And if you don't listen to the public public won't support you. And that's what happened. And now again, you know, Boris Johnson delivered. He said, I'm going to get Brexit done. He got Brexit done. And of course, the situation with COVID, releasing billions and billions of pounds to the public to keep people alive. Labour couldn't have done much different. You know, they can't complain. So yeah, there's been a lot of things going in, you know, in their positive in their direction. And of course, I think Keir Starmer is not a very popular guy as well. You know, the new Labour guy head, he's not very popular, and he's not got his message across clearly at all. And so the electorate is not impressed by him. So yes, too many things were going in the direction of the Conservatives. But of course, that doesn't mean it'll stay that way. Yeah, it could be a temporary thing, but it could be another 10 years before Labour gets back into power. And that's something extremely worrying for Labour, because they've hardly had much experience of power since Margaret Thatcher came into power back in 1979. So from 79 to till now, how much, you know, how much power has Labour had? Just the period of Blair. And why did Blair get into power? Because he turned to the right. See, Britain is not a left-wing country. It's not it's a conservative with a small c. And so their natural tendency is always towards the Conservatives, as long as the Conservatives don't mess it up. So, you know, big businesses with them. And I suppose one of the things that those who support Labour are thinking is, well, the Conservatives are in power. Labour is not going to get in power for a long time. And therefore, if we vote Conservative, we're likely to get more money and become richer as well. And our, you know, councils will become richer. This is the thinking. So, yeah, there are many reasons why people have headed towards the Conservatives and abandoned Labour. Anyhow, let's see what happens in the future.
Okay, mashallah, jazakallah khair. And do you think about the SNP, if they make an alliance with the Green, they will go for another referendum, although the Conservative and the Labour are against?
I suppose because the SNP didn't get the overwhelming vote that they were hoping for, that kind of weakens their case. But yeah, Boris Johnson is going to do his best not to break up the UK. But the way things are going, you know, give it another 10 years, maybe less, you may well have a divide and rule. You know, there's the same policy that Britain has been practicing all over the world, divide and rule. may well happen to Britain, where Scotland certainly does not, I mean, there's a split in Scotland, roughly 50-50, those who want to stay and those who want to go. But one thing is for sure, the majority of Scots wanted to stay in the EU. They voted to stay in the EU. And of course, they're not happy leaving the EU when the majority of them wanted to stay in the EU. And the same goes for the Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, the Northern Irish, they feel seriously let down. Again, Boris Johnson lied to them. They said there'll be no border, and of course now there is some kind of border, and Northern Ireland is not being treated as part of the United Kingdom. So there's a likelihood, it's quite possible, that Northern Ireland, in order to stay within the EU, will join up with the Republic of Ireland, and so there will be no need for a border between the two, and leave the UK.
And I believe the Wales as well. Do you think Wales will follow the same route as Scotland? And
yes, it all depends on the economic situation, I suppose, to some extent, because as the economic situation gets worse, and it will get worse, this situation is not sustainable. Just living on borrowed money. Just you keep pumping more and more billions to keep people furloughed when there is no work, or so many thousands of businesses have gone bust. Debenhams now today closed the rest of all their stores. It's been around for a very, very long time. Hundreds of their stores have closed. It was same went with Woolworths and all these big names. People are going online. They're not going, and shopping as much as they did, because it's so much easier to just go online and pick what you want from there. Banks are going bust. Banks are closing down because people are, using online banking much more. So what's the need for that? We're heading for a very serious economic crisis, and as that happens, you'll find that the UK will just completely fall apart. City centres are completely losing. The businesses are moving out of the city centres. More and more people are working from home, and therefore, big, huge buildings, office buildings in the city centre are becoming vacant. They will be turned into flats, more residential rather than business, and all the ecosystem around the city centres that supported all the businesses is going to disappear. All these restaurants and takeaways and all the laundry places and all these other places that were being sustained by the business within the city centre, all of them are disappearing. And so the government gets less money also from business rates and all the rest of it, and rental, and so you're going to get a serious change downwards within the business sectors, and therefore this will impact the union as a whole. And if the Irish feel they're better off on their own, and if the Scottish feel they're better off on their own, and if the Welsh feel the same way, then England will be left by itself. Okay, and that's the reality. That's the direction things appear to be going.
Okay, right. Thank you very much for that. I think, of course, we can go for statistic and everything later on. I think we will those are just headlines. Boris Johnson and his flat refurbishment, paid holidays inquiry, lobbying, and David Cameron, ex-prime minister, getting employed, getting maybe millions of pounds, and he was saying better than the salary of a prime minister. and then the whole company fails and trying to lobby for this company to get
I know. Let's talk about Gaza now.
right. I think because of that COVID, I think world news, Palestine, I think it's the issue, and of course escalation of the aggression of Zionist occupation army, and the toll is going up. Within hit the Shati refuge camp in Gaza, at least 2 women and 7 children were added to 139 dead, including almost 36, I believe, children, and for 10,000 people displaced, 36 and 920 wounded. And of course, in the occupied territory, there was lynching of Palestinian Arabs in Israel, in the occupied territories as well. And there was a lot of rioting and destruction of businesses and properties. And of course, at the wake of the Sheikh Jarrah expropriation order, storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque, disrespect of place of worship, and Gaza aggression.
Yeah, that's what's been happening. So look, the situation really, what I want to talk about, we're running out of time. We're running out of time. So what I want to talk about is Israel is used to battering Gaza every few years.
3 wars, The
last time it killed about over 2,000 civilians.
2,200, 2014, yes.
Yeah, and about 500 children. I mean, Israel is used to this, this slaughter. It's a huge, immense, powerful army. The latest technology, latest killer weapons from America, from Britain, and from elsewhere.
Germany, yes.
Yeah. So, and they use it against unarmed, civilians. I mean, they're bullies. They're bullies, and they are barbarians. There's no question about it. Okay.
Yes.
That's the way they've behaved previously, and because they've got America in their pockets, the US will never harm Israel. They won't even restrict them. There'll be no question of sanctions, etc. And because of that, Israel feels they can do whatever they like. They can do absolutely anything because there's nothing anyone can do about it. They're above international law.
And Biden said about self-defense to Israel.
Yeah. So I think the situation is a bit different this time. What happened last time was, okay, we used to hear of, Hamas or Islamic Jihad are throwing, hundreds of rockets into Israel. But rockets, really, they were lead pipes with a bit of gunpowder in them.
That's about 5 kilometer distance.
By the time those so-called rockets reached, by chance, somebody's house, well, only if a person was it landed on a person directly, it could kill them, because it was just a lead pipe. That's all it was. Because by the time it reached, a few kilometers, the gunpowder had run out and there was no explosion or anything, hardly. And so, they were just ineffective, just lead pipes being thrown at the Israelis. But of course, the Israelis were dropping 1,000-pound bombs on Gaza and destroying, entire 10, 12, 15 floor flats. I mean, that's the comparison between the two. The Hamas rockets are just lead pipes. It only would kill you if it landed on you and went right through you. And then you've got 1,000-pound bombs being unleashed by F-16s and other, and probably another sort of killer planes, and drones, of course, now being used. So there's no comparison between the two attacks. Now the situation is a little different. I read an article once a few years ago. It was an interview with some Hamas commander, And he was asked, look, you know, at that time there were suicide bombings and stuff going on as well. And then you had these rock. He was asked, these lead pipes, they don't kill anyone. And then the Israelis use that excuse to kill you and many of you. And okay, you have a suicide bomber. Okay, he kills 5 people, 2 people, sometimes nobody. Why do you do this? Why bother? He said, look, we know that these are very small actions. And we know what the reaction is going to be. We are giving them an excuse to really hit us hard. But what we are trying to create is a balance of fear. They have created an enormous amount of fear within the people of Gaza. The Israelis deliberately have been flying their F-16s and others, planes, very, very, very low and breaking the sound barrier. So they create a massive boom right above their heads, creating enormous fear within the children, the women, etc. And of course, this traumatizes them, and as well as all the bombings and stuff. So what we are trying to do is create a similar level of fear within the Israeli population that they are doing to us. Now, they weren't, okay, there would have been some fear, some Israelis go into a mall and they might have feared somebody might, some suicide bomber might sort of just blow themselves up in the mall. So there was a bit of fear, sure, at that time for those actions. And some Israelis living near the Gaza border might fear the odd sort of piece of lead landing on their heads or something, but not massively huge. However, a few years ago, recently, I would say, some Gazan men, they, on the coast of Gaza, they discovered, they dived deep into the sea, and they discovered I think World War I British destroyer fully laden with bombs, which had sunk right next to Gaza. And what they did was they pulled out all the bombs, which were still unexploded, 100 years later. But yes, unexploded, absolutely. But of course, eroded, a lot of erosion had taken place.
Yes.
So what they did was they pulled out all of these bombs, okay, brought them to the surface. And then they did something very smart. Because the shells were pretty much finished, because 100 years underwater, they're not going to last, they're not going to be in good shape. So what they did was they managed to, now remember the Israeli settlers, those colonial settlers in Gaza, and they moved out, remember that?
Yes.
Now, of course, the Israelis, they had a full infrastructure built for those settlers, right? Including water pipes and all sorts, and drainage and sewage piping and stuff, so, modern infrastructure. Now, when the Israelis left, of course, they destroyed their homes, but what about underground? They left all the lead pipes and everything there. So what the Gazans did, what Hamas did, was they dug up those pipes, which were in excellent condition and high quality pipes, and they modified them, customized them towards carrying. They had tons and tons of gunpowder, from the bombs, the bomb material. And their engineers got to work and their bomb makers got to work, and they actually turned them into usable rockets. And these rockets were far more powerful than the lead pipes they used to throw over, into Israel. And that's why you've seen now these rockets have been reaching well into central Israel and even further north of Israel. And they have been landing in Tel Aviv. They didn't have the technology before. Now with what they've done, those rockets, and they are proper rockets, these are not just lead pipes flying through the air. They carry gunpowder and they travel much further.
Yes.
And they have been causing devastation. Even Israel's Iron Dome, missile defense system has not been able to deal with the hundreds of rockets.
Therefore, it becomes actually ineffective.
Well, if 100 rockets are fired, almost at the same time, how many are going to be knocked out? Maybe even if they knock out half of them, you've still got half those rockets going over and landing in residential areas, many of them in business areas, and not many people have died because of the Israelis. They get warnings. They've got sophisticated warning systems, and they've all got bomb shelters in their homes. So not many have died, but the devastation has been massive. And what Hamas wanted to do has been achieved. They have managed to achieve a balance of fear, because now every Israeli fears a rocket, not just a piece of lead piping, but a rocket could end up landing on their homes and destroying their home, and of course killing them. So that is what's different this time. They actually do fear, and because of these rocket situation. And so they know, the Israelis, that as time goes on, no matter how much they try to destroy Gaza, you got 2 million people living there. Of course, it's absolutely tragic what's happening to the population. But I remember I was speaking to one brother that you and I both know. Is from Gaza, living here in Manchester. And I said to him, it's so devastating. It's this tiny little population. And, you have like 2,000 people, 500 baby children who died. He said, don't worry. Yes, it is very tragic what we are seeing. But those 500 children we lost, we made up for them before we even buried those 500, because of the high birth rate in Gaza. So I remember it wasn't long ago that the official population of Gaza was 1.5 million. Now, within a fairly short time, it's 2 million. And give it another, so no matter how many they're going to kill, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, but the population of Gaza is going to be increasing by 500,000, 1 million. Soon, it's going to be 3 million. It won't be too long. With the high birth rate, it's going to be much more difficult for Israel to contain such a large population in such a small, tiny little area. So the problems for Israel are growing. And of course, because of social media, the world can see the barbarity of the Israeli attacks and behavior in Jerusalem, in Al-Aqsa, also in Gaza, dead bodies of children, etc. And more and more Israeli soldiers, I think, are also speaking up and saying, you know, we did some real nasty stuff. And they have a conscience as well. And after killing and killing and killing innocent men, women, and children, especially women and children, they, you know, a lot of these soldiers are having sleepless nights.
Yeah. Okay.
And there are other things which are happening in Israel. There are other things happening in Israel which are going to make it more difficult for Israel to continue with this barbaric treatment of the Palestinians. And of course, one of those things is that the ultra religious, the fundamentalists, Jewish fundamentalists there, the ultra religious, Orthodox Christians, yes, ultra Orthodox, they, number one, don't recognize Israel.
Yes.
They firmly believe that only the Messiah can take the Jews into the promised land. And Britain, France, America, Russia are not the Messiah. Theodor Herzl was not the Messiah. And so it is completely against Jewish law for Jews to enter Israel, completely against their religion. So, and also, so number one, initially, see, when Israel was created, only less than maybe 1% were ultra-Orthodox. Now, because the secular Jews, who are the majority, their lifestyle is a typical Western lifestyle. They don't care about religion. And so they're having one, maybe two babies. But the ultra-Orthodox, they like football teams, and you know, they've got 10, 11 children in every family. And the result is that after so many decades, about 10% of Israel is now ultra-Orthodox. These people, as I said, they are completely against the state of Israel. Their men don't believe in working. They believe in studying the Torah. And they don't believe in joining the military. So that becomes a major, major problem for Netanyahu and for the Israeli government. And so you can see, give it another 20 years, that the situation in Israel will rip Israel apart. It will tear Israel apart. And it can only weaken it. So, and at a political level, yes, even the Palestinian population is increasing, the ultra-Orthodox population is increasing, the seculars who run Israel, the Ashkenazi Jews, their population is not increasing as much. And so the result of all this is going to be a weakening of Israel as a state. Even though they've got this, you know, huge army, I think probably the world's largest army, since everyone is a member of the army, everyone over 15. I think is it 15 to 55? You're a member of the army.
Because of a national service, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's you know.
You spoke about political, and I believe the time they have done it, they have chosen it very well. It was Ramadan, last 10 days, and Eid as well. The Biden administration, through the COVID-19 pandemic and the national, after the reign of Donald Trump as well, and the leadership, world leadership was absent. The Muslim leadership was absent. Even the Palestine Authority leadership is absent. You see now one of the survivors, because Netanyahu is, he is actually almost going out of, if he goes out of the prime minister, he will end in jail because of the corruption and all kind of allegation against him, and the court is waiting for that. Do you think he is a survivor, like Trump has been using the Capitol Hill onslaught to stay for another term, and Netanyahu is using this war, so-called, he called it war, and of course it's against civilian most of the time, and he is using this conflict to stay as a prime minister. Almost he has 15 years in this position. And
well, this is it. Yeah, absolutely. No, what you said is absolutely, I mean, so many commentators said exactly the same thing, that, look, why now? Why this unprovoked attack on Al-Aqsa?
yes,
What is the purpose of this? And this, look, there's a bigger picture. On the one hand, of course, the bigger picture is that they want to East Jerusalem, like West Jerusalem, they want to remove all the Arab population, destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque, and build Solomon's Temple. That's the bigger picture. And so expel all Arabs, all Palestinians from East Jerusalem. And that's what Sheikh Jarrah is about. It's about depopulating East Jerusalem with its Arab population.
yes.
So that's the bigger plan there. Why do it now? Well, he's got the court appearance. He could end up in jail. He's made it clear he can't form a government, so he's just an acting head of state at the moment. And so this is his political maneuver, a very expensive and very risky one for him, because it can go either way. And one of the problems now he's facing, he didn't realize perhaps that it was going to turn this bad against him. One is everything has been captured on camera, and the whole world is seeing it straight away, and they are seeing apartheid in action. Like, it's so blatant, apartheid within Israel, and the discrimination of Palestinians is so blatant, and it's there. They can't hide it. They can't control the narrative. Social media has blown that for them. So the other thing that actually the Israelis are really afraid of, they'll go about Gaza. They know they can flatten Gaza anytime they want to. Yeah, they've got the military, and you got an unarmed population, and even Hamas with its hundreds of thousands of rockets, it's not having much of an impact, as of course the Israelis are in Gaza. What worries the Zionists in Israel right now, and the government will be worried about this, is that the Israeli Arabs, okay, who are supposed to be equal citizens, but of course are definitely not equal in any way at all, who are supposed to be equal citizens of Israel, although they're 20% of the population, I mean, the population of Israel is about 10 million, and the Arab population is about 2 million. So it's 20% of the population there is now, especially in those cities where it's mixed, like Lod and what have you, they are now, that relationship between the Arab and the Jew, even though they've been living right next to each other for decades now, is now breaking down. And the Arabs are not afraid to take on the Zionists. And this, and you can see the Israelis are destroying Palestinian shops, and no doubt the Palestinians will be replying in kind as well. And so you've got Arab and Jew sort of, or Zionist, fighting within Israel with each other. That really does worry them, because obviously 2 million is not 2,000. And the Palestinian population would, I'm sure, relish the idea of getting some revenge for all the suffering of decades and decades. And what the Israelis have managed to do, I was listening to a report just yesterday, is that, and this was Marwan Barghouti, who was a senior Palestinian leader. He was saying that what the Israelis have managed to do is unite all the Palestinians, those in Gaza, West Bank, those inside Israel, in Jordan, in fact, the diaspora as a whole.
About 13 million altogether, actually, Palestinians.
Yeah. So he said, we are, social media, of course, has helped to bring them together. And also, they have become a bit more sophisticated as well. They understand that unity is the key. And what they've managed to do, these rocket attacks, especially deep into Israel, is made Hamas far more popular than the PA, the Palestinian Authority. Mahmoud Abbas, where is he? Quiet. No, nobody, he doesn't say a thing. I've not heard any statements from him at all, or from the PA. And therefore, the people in Jerusalem, when they see Hamas rockets hitting Israelis, Jewish Israelis, Zionist Israelis, of course, it makes them feel that, yes, stuff the PA, they are useless. They're not our leaders. Hamas are our leaders. What this invasion of Gaza and the invasion of Al-Aqsa has done, and all this fighting is done, is made more Palestinians respect Hamas over PA. And that, of course, is worrying for the West. Because we saw in 2007, when they held free and fair elections, in a very democratic process, Hamas won about, 67% of the vote or something like that. I think now, if there were democratic elections amongst the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank,
I think they postponed it now anyway.
Yes, they would get, Hamas would get probably 90%, maybe 95% even, because the people in Jerusalem, the Palestinians in Jerusalem and elsewhere, they can see that who is standing up for the Palestinians? Hamas are. Nobody else.
Okay, I think because of time now, the United Nations Security Council is meeting tomorrow. The Islamic or Cooperation Organization, the IOC, this one is actually meeting tomorrow as well, after they made a statement.
Look,
regarding
OIC, the Organization of Islamic Conference,
or cooperative.
They are a bunch of useless
57 members.
57 people who come for a nice little chit chat, nice meal, and then they'll say, oh yes, bad boy Israel. What they're doing is wrong, absolutely wrong. Assalamu alaikum, ma'as salama. And they just go back to their work.
European Union?
European Union, yes, oh, human rights this and human rights that. And little is going to happen.
African Union?
What can they do? The only people who have any influence over Israel are the Americans, because they give almost $4 billion every year to the Israelis, free of charge, no strings attached.
Right, and China, Russia?
They're out of it. What can they do? There's little that they can do, absolutely little.
What about Turkey, Erdogan statement?
Erdogan, look, his heart is in the right place, but his economy is very weak. And the Turkish lira has been losing value tremendously. His economy is not in a good condition.
And they have a Syrian war as well, and Iraqi war as well next to them.
Erdogan has got his hands in many, many pies.
Libya.
Erdogan sees himself as the Khalifa of the Ummah, yeah, Amir al-Mu'mineen. But he needs the support of all Muslims to play that role. He talks like a Khalifa, and he tries to act like a Khalifa. But of course, his economy is not going to let him, because the West can destroy his economy. What weapon has he got? Okay, he's going to open the floodgates of the Syrian refugees towards Europe. And Europe, it'll be a nightmare for Europe again. Another 1 million, 2 million Syrian refugees heading towards Europe. We saw what happened in the last 3-4 years. Europe does not want that. But, that's his sort of main weapon against the West, against Europe.
I think what is now, I just spoke about government, civil society organization like the Muslim Council of Britain, MAB, within the UK, what can they do? And individually, what can we do?
Look, if we were to act collectively, there's a lot we can do. Yes, dua, never underestimate the power of dua. Just in Britain, the 3.3 million Muslims of Britain, if we really sincerely make dua, inshallah, you will see things happening that the Israelis don't like. We can give, thousands of pounds, millions of pounds to those NGOs, Interpal, Islamic Relief, and all these Muslim Hand and all these
Human
other,
Appeal International.
Yeah, all these other charities who are working on the ground, we give them plenty of money to help those who are suffering. Okay, the widows, the children, etc. We can write to our MPs to say, look, you want our vote? Then put pressure on the government to put pressure on Israel, because we created this mess in the first place.
Yes.
Right? Britain created this mess in the first place.
Yes.
By, as Arthur Koestler, a very eminent and prominent Jewish historian and academic, said, what happened, the Balfour Declaration, he said, was a declaration in which one nation promised a second the country of a third.
Mm.
That's what happened. Britain promised the Jews the country of the Palestinians. So what he's saying is, Britain, what right did Britain have to promise the Jews the country of the Palestinians? Palestine did not belong to Britain. Britain had a mandate, which simply
for 28 years, yes.
It had a mandate. Mandate simply means permission to administer. It was not ownership. A mandate is not ownership. And so Britain could offer Manchester to the Jews. It could offer London to the Jews. It could offer Wales to the Jews. It could offer Scotland to the Jews. It could not offer Palestine to the Jews. And therefore, and also this lie that the Zionists have been peddling all these years, that Palestine was a land without a people for a people without a land. Yeah? A land without a people? Well, people can see that this was no land without a people. And the Jews were not a people without a land. They had Europe, they had America, they were all spread all over. And they were the elite of these countries. They were the elite. They were the upper classes, not even the middle classes. So this lie that the Zionists have been peddling all these decades, hopefully, we can see with social media and more of our youngsters becoming more active. And you saw that in the parks, in these marches and protest marches. They're becoming more educated. You see, the Zionists thought after 10, 20, 30 years, the Palestinians will just get used to living in Syria, in Egypt, in Jordan, wherever they are, in Lebanon, and they'll just get on with it. Thank you very much. They won't bother about, coming back to their place of origin in Palestine. Then we'll have it and we can live peacefully for the rest of our lives. It hasn't turned out that way for the Zionists. And those that they kicked out from their homes, 800,000 from people from 700 villages who were ethnically cleansed.
600, yeah.
No, 800,000 from 700 villages. That's the official that I've read. And they want their homes back. They want to go back home, even after 70, 80 years or however long it is since 1947. They are not accepting that, okay, fait accompli, it's happened. But now let's just get on with our lives in all these neighboring countries. No, they're not going to give up on getting their land back. And Israel is not going to be a permanent feature on the landscape of the Middle East. That is what they are saying. You are here for a temporary period. This is an illegitimate entity. This is their attitude. Whatever international, whatever the Americans feel, whatever the Europeans feel.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a major, major headache for the Zionists, and that's why many of the intellectuals are, I'm sure they're scratching their heads and saying, well, look, there were three options for us. One was a two-state solution. Well, that's impossible now. It's been trampled under the feet of 800,000 these colonial fanatical Zionist settlers on the West Bank. They're not going to give up their homes, 800,000 of them, almost 1 million. So the two-state solution, dead and buried. Forget it. There's only one way that it can happen. That two-state solution could still be possible. Only one way, and that is if the government of Israel pulls out all the troops, their soldiers, from the West Bank. And so those settlements have no protection. Those settlers will be going back to America, to France, to Britain, to Germany, and wherever else they came from. They won't be living there.
Are you saying that the occupied territories after 1967 should be freed from all Israeli citizens and made available to the Palestinians to return?
You know what?
5 million or so.
Hamas accepted that, to go back to the 67 borders. But of course, now since then, there's been more settlement expansion and more settlers, and therefore there's no question of there being a two-state solution.
And do you think that because now they are amassing their troops on the border of Gaza, and of course they are actually saying, of course, if you want to do it, you should do it, but they are saying it, they want to have a ground invasion. Tomorrow is United Nations Security Council, and there was a call by Turkey a few years ago about international United Nations peacekeeping force to keep the two parts so this, and then open up the Gaza and end the siege from Gaza as well. Therefore, the Palestinian state can take a place, and then they can do their own election, and it will be feasible. And of course, before 1917, for 1400 years, Jews, Christian, and Muslims. I have here actual map 1917, 1400 years of Islamic rule with no whatsoever conflict between all communities. They were made of majority of Muslims. 6% of the total population was Jews, a same percentage or 10% Christian, and the rest were actually Muslims. Now, the idea of making Palestine as one state and therefore keeping all the components, because an international place for all Abrahamic faiths, and bring in all the communities together under the rule of law and under the rule, respecting the law, democracy, respecting of
So
individual
that
freedom and
is-
everything.
That is, so I said to you, there were three solutions.
Mm.
Yeah. One was the two-state solution, and a Jewish state right next to a Palestinian state with the West Bank and Gaza. That's now out of the question. The second thing, second option was a one-state solution, which is what you just said, yeah?
Mm.
State solution, one man, one vote.
Yes.
So Jew or Palestinian, you've got one vote. And therefore, you bring the whole, the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel into one country, and everyone is equal under the law. Of course, the Israelis will never accept that. That's the ideal solution. Everyone lives equally. The Israelis will never accept it because they know that the Palestinian birth rate is higher than theirs. So right now, okay, there might be 8 million Jews there, but very soon there will be more than 8 million Palestinians there.
But when you Israeli, not all Israeli Jews are Zionists. Therefore, the Zionist party is in control of the Israel now. Although there was 5 elections now, the Likud party could not make actual majority government up to now. And if the Orthodox Jews who are against the Zionism and all the state of Israel, do you think that, and with all the Palestinians, about 13 million of them, and of course the Jews who are there inside, if they say one vote, one person, one vote, if there was an election on this, and a party like Zionism, if he doesn't get support from outside, do you think it has any future?
The Israelis will never accept one man, one vote, because they know that that will be the end of Zionism and the Zionist dream, okay? Because it'll be just an ordinary state with Muslim, Christian, and Jew living peacefully, and that's not what they want. They want a Zionist Jewish state, which gives preference to Jews above all other minorities. So by nature, what they want is an apartheid state, okay? And that is the third option. So two-state solution, out the question. It's gone, it's not possible. A one-state solution, the ideal solution, not feasible, not acceptable, because it'll be the end of Zionism, the Zionist state. The third option, therefore, there's only one option, apartheid. And that is what they have chosen. And now you've got apartheid throughout the system. You've got, see, on the West Bank, what you've got is occupied territory. So those people are under occupation. In Gaza, again, under occupation.
Under siege.
In East Jerusalem, they are supposed to be Israelis, but they are not citizens, but they are residents.
Okay.
Okay, they're not citizens, but they're residents. And then the Arabs, the Palestinians living in Israel are supposed to be citizens with equal rights. But there is formal and informal discrimination built into the system. Okay, so on the one hand, you've got different rules, for example, with regards land and property. So, and also in terms of infrastructure, where there are Palestinian villages and towns, you see they are decades behind. Whereas the Jewish ones, where the Jewish majority, a huge amount of money has been spent on them to make them modern. So there's discrimination in terms of spending of money on
health, education, everything, yes.
Health, education, especially where there are mixed. They've got segregated schools, and the curriculum is different, and the funding is different. The Jewish schools, much better funded. So you've got built-in discrimination, even though on the surface of it, they're supposed to be equal with the Palestinians are supposed to be equal with the Jews. and at a political level as well. The Palestinian Arab representatives have not been treated as legitimate representatives of the Palestinian people and given sort of equal treatment within the political system. So whatever way you look at it, you've got apartheid totally embedded within the system. And of course, in 2018, you had the nation state law, which made it official. This is a Jewish state. That's it. This is a Jewish state. And if you are not Jewish, you should just be grateful that you are being allowed to live here. There's your apartheid. In democracies, like we are living in a democracy in the UK, the majority population, white, yes, non-Muslim, indigenous population, you could call it, they're the majority. The minority are 10, 15, 20%, okay? 10% or whatever. That's the minority. That's your Muslims and Jews.
Sikh,
and
Hindu, whatever.
We are a minority, but this is what democracy is about. The minority must never be made to feel like second-class citizens. So the law applies equally to the majority and to the minority. If a typical white Englishman is unemployed, he gets the same amount as you or me, even though we are not part of the racial majority of this country. In the same circumstances, we will get the same amount. In funding for councils and all the rest of it, it's got to be the same, whether there are a large number of Muslims there or mixed populations or whatever. That's what democracy is about. So when the Israelis say, we are a democracy, well, no, you're not. You're an apartheid system. Officially apartheid, not emotionally we're saying this. No, officially it's an apartheid system. That's the reality.
But therefore, now the United Nations, the international law, and the international community, like they created in 1948, this state of Israel by United Nations resolution, and the United Nations and the international community cannot impose a solution on the Zionist movement worldwide?
Look, might is right. And right now, with America being the superpower of the world, China is trying to catch up, but still America. And only America having any real influence over Israel. And Israel being as powerful as it is, even though it's a small country. Who's going to force Israel to live according to international standards and to be judged by international law when they've got America protecting them all the time? That is the problem. So long as that American protection, that's a real iron dome that Israel has got, the United States. Because the United States will always protect Israel, and we have talked about Christian Zionism in the past.
Yes.
That's why they will protect Israel, always. Because, as we talked about, the
Yes.
second coming of Christ and all the rest of it. So this is the reality. This is the situation. And whether the Democrats are in power or the Republicans are in power, it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. The protection of Israel will always remain.
All right. I think, Asad Zaman, it was great actually to talk to you as well. And I hope our listeners will be actually benefiting from our discussion as well. And we may keep it as free as possible. Those people who need to have an input or questions for our A2Z show for next week, inshallah, you can just email us on admin@Radio Hajj online. And of course, you can listen to this program on YouTube and on radiohajj.online as well. It's available for you, picture and sound as well, and text as well. We try to put the text, of course. And of course, this the topic will be coming back as well. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this night to stop this bloodshed and human lives. Every soul should not be taken away in 2021. We see a Holocaust again. Have we seen it? And those who supposed to have an experience with Holocaust, they should actually stand and stop killing civilians, whatever the pretext is and whatever the aim and objectives. That land is the promised land to all humanity. It's an international land. And always, I believe, if justice will prevail like it has for 1400 years before 1917, before the British mandate, that justice will bring peace, not only just to Palestine, Jerusalem, but to the whole world. So therefore, the word which we have seen in the protest, they were speaking about end occupation now, free Palestine, end the siege of Gaza, and the no justice, no peace. Those still the mottos people should be, and of course, this is mottos are for the whole world. And if justice prevail, I believe justice prevail will bring peace, harmony, and economic development.
Inshallah.
And inshallah, may Allah bless you, inshallah, may Allah accept you. We say our speech and we say, Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, nashhadu astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.